Francine stepped out of the transport, her boots kicking up a cloud of dust as they hit the ground. The alien marketplace stretched out before her, a riot of colors, sounds, and smells that assaulted her senses. She blinked, her eyes adjusting to the harsh, unfamiliar light of the planet's twin suns. Around her, the rest of her unit fanned out, their weapons at the ready as they surveyed the bustling crowd. They were here on a routine patrol, a show of force to remind the locals of the Galactic Alliance's presence in this far-flung corner of the galaxy. Francine couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to this mission, though. She had been a soldier for years, had fought in countless battles across a dozen worlds, but she had never felt quite like this before. It was as if there was something calling to her, some inexplicable force that was drawing her deeper into the heart of the market. She shook her head, trying to clear her thoughts. She had a job to do, and she couldn't afford to get distracted by some strange, half-formed intuition. She fell into step beside her squad mates, her rifle held loosely at her side as they made their way through the crowds. The market was a labyrinth of narrow, winding streets and alleyways, each one lined with stalls and shops selling everything from exotic fruits and spices to high-tech weapons and gadgets. The air was thick with the chatter of 100 different languages, the cries of hawkers and vendors mingling with the whirring and beeping of machines. Francine found herself drawn to one particular stall, tucked away in a far corner of the market. It was a small, unassuming thing, little more than a rickety wooden table piled high with an assortment of strange and wondrous objects. Behind the table sat an alien, its skin a mottled green and its eyes a glittering black. It watched Francine approach with a curious tilt of its head, its long, spindly fingers tapping out a rhythmless beat on the tabletop. "Welcome, traveler," it said, its voice a raspy whisper that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "What brings you to my humble shop?" Francine didn't answer, her attention caught by a small, oblong object nestled among the clutter. It was an egg, its shell a deep, iridescent blue that seemed to shimmer and dance in the light. She reached out, her fingers trembling slightly as they closed around the egg. It was warm to the touch, almost as if there was something alive inside, something waiting to be born. "Ah, you have a keen eye," the alien said, its voice taking on a sly, knowing tone. "That is a rare and precious thing, a treasure beyond compare." Francine looked up, her eyes narrowing. "How much?" she asked, her voice curt and businesslike. The alien chuckled, a dry, rasping sound that set Francine's teeth on edge. "For you, my dear, a mere trifle, shall we say, 1,000 credits." Francine scoffed. 1,000 credits? For an egg? You must be joking." The alien leaned forward, its eyes glittering with a strange, almost predatory intensity. "This is no ordinary egg, traveler. It is a thing of power, a key to secrets long forgotten. Trust me when I say that it is worth far more than a mere 1,000 credits." Francine hesitated, her grip on the egg tightening. She could feel something stirring inside her, a deep, primal need to possess this strange and wondrous thing. She didn't know why, couldn't explain the feeling, but she knew that she had to have it. 500, she said, her voice firm and unyielding. "Not a credit more." The alien sat back, its fingers steepled before it. "You drive a hard bargain, traveler. But I can see that you are determined. Very well. 500 credits it is." Francine reached into her pocket, her fingers closing around the hard, cool edge of her credit chip. She hesitated for a moment, a flicker of doubt passing through her mind. What was she doing, spending so much money on a mere trinket? But the feeling passed as quickly as it had come, and she found herself handing over the chip before she quite knew what she was doing. The alien took it with a small, satisfied smile, its fingers closing around it like the jaws of a trap. "A pleasure doing business with you, traveler," it said, its voice a sibilant hiss. "May the egg bring you all that you desire." Francine nodded, tucking the egg carefully into her pack. She turned to go, but something made her pause, a sudden, inexplicable urge to look back. The alien was watching her, its eyes glinting with a strange, almost knowing light. For a moment, Francine could have sworn that it was smiling, a wide, toothy grin that stretched across its face like a gash. But then the moment passed, and the alien was just another vendor, its wares spread out before it like a strange and wondrous feast. Francine shook her head, a chill running down her spine. She turned and walked away, the egg a heavy weight in her pack, and a strange, unsettling feeling in the pit of her stomach. She didn't know what she had just done, what forces she had set in motion with her impulsive purchase. But one thing was certain: her life would never be the same again. Francine sat in her quarters on the cruiser, the egg cradled gently in her lap. She had managed to sneak it aboard without anyone noticing, hiding it away in a small, secluded corner of the ship that she had claimed as her own. She couldn't explain why she had done it, why she had risked so much for a mere trinket. But there was something about the egg that called to her, a strange, inexplicable pull that she couldn't resist. She ran her fingers over the smooth, iridescent surface of the shell, marveling at the way it seemed to shimmer and dance in the dim light of her quarters. It was warm to the touch, almost as if there was something alive inside, something waiting to be born. Suddenly, the door to her quarters slid open, and Francine looked up to see one of her squad mates, a tall, broad-shouldered man named Marcus, standing in the doorway. "Hey, Francine," he said, his voice casual and friendly. "We missed you at the briefing. Is everything okay?" Francine nodded, her heart pounding in her chest as she tried to keep her expression neutral. "Yeah, everything's fine," she said, her voice sounding strained and unnatural to her own ears. "I just needed some time to myself, that's all." Marcus frowned, his eyes darting to the egg in her lap. "What's that?" he asked, his voice taking on a note of suspicion. Francine hesitated, her mind racing as she tried to come up with a plausible explanation. "It's just a souvenir," she said, her voice sounding weak and unconvincing even to her own ears. "Something I picked up at the market." Marcus's frown deepened, and he took a step closer, his eyes narrowing as he studied the egg more closely. "That's not just any souvenir," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "That's a draconian void egg, one of the rarest and most valuable artifacts in the galaxy." Francine felt a chill run down her spine, her heart hammering in her chest as the full weight of what she had done began to sink in. She had stolen an artifact, a treasure beyond compare, and now she was going to have to face the consequences. "I didn't know," she said, her voice trembling slightly as she tried to keep her composure. "I swear I had no idea what it was." Marcus shook his head, his expression grim and unyielding. "It doesn't matter," he said, his voice cold and unforgiving. "You broke protocol, Francine. You put the entire mission at risk. You know what the penalty is for that." Francine swallowed hard, her mouth suddenly dry as sandpaper. She knew all too well what the penalty was for theft in the Galactic Alliance. It was a one-way trip to the brig, followed by a court-martial and a dishonorable discharge. But even as the fear gripped her heart, she felt a strange, inexplicable sense of calm wash over her. She looked down at the egg in her lap, at the shimmering, iridescent surface that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. And then, without warning, the egg began to crack. Francine gasped, her eyes widening in shock as a network of fine, spidery lines began to spread across the surface of the shell. She watched, transfixed, as the cracks grew wider and deeper, until finally, with a sharp, audible snap, the egg split open. And there, nestled amidst the shards of broken shell, was a tiny, perfect dragon. It was no more than a foot long from snout to tail, its scales a deep, shimmering blue that seemed to glow with an inner light. Its wings were folded tight against its body, its eyes closed as if in sleep. But as Francine reached out to touch it, the dragon's eyes snapped open, and it let out a soft, trilling cry that seemed to pierce straight to her heart. She gasped, her hand flying to her mouth as the dragon uncurled itself, its wings spreading wide as it stretched and yawned. It looked up at her, its eyes a deep, endless blue that seemed to hold all the secrets of the universe. And in that moment, Francine knew that she would do anything to protect this tiny, perfect creature, no matter the cost. She looked up at Marcus, her expression set and determined. "I'm not giving it up," she said, her voice steady and unafraid. "I don't care what the consequences are. This dragon is mine, and I won't let anyone take it away from me." Marcus stared at her, his expression unreadable. For a long, tense moment, neither of them moved, the only sound the soft, trilling cry of the dragon as it nuzzled against Francine's hand. And then, Finally, Marcus sighed, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "I don't know what you've gotten yourself into, Francine," he said, his voice weary and resigned. "But I can see that there's no changing your mind." He turned to go, but paused at the door, his hand resting on the frame. "Just be careful," he said, his voice soft and almost sad. "The galaxy is a dangerous place, and there are plenty of people out there who would kill to get their hands on a dragon." Francine nodded, her heart swelling with a fierce, protective love for the tiny creature in her arms. "I know," she said, her voice soft but strong, "but I'm willing to take that risk. This dragon is a part of me now, and I won't let anything happen to it." Marcus nodded, a small, sad smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "I hope you know what you're doing," he said, his voice almost a whisper. And then he was gone, the door sliding shut behind him with a soft, pneumatic hiss. Francine looked down at the dragon in her arms, at the shimmering, iridescent scales that seemed to glow with an inner fire. She knew that she had just set herself on a path from which there could be no turning back, a path that would lead her into the heart of darkness and danger. But as she gazed into the dragon's deep, endless eyes, she knew that she was ready for whatever lay ahead. She had found her destiny, and she would follow it to the ends of the galaxy and beyond. Thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to leave us a like and subscribe too. We'll see you in the next video.